The first wolf walked through the eastern gate, just before sunrise. He carried nothing except a small leather bag over his shoulder. No guard stopped him. Moments later, a young mother followed, holding her little daughter's hand. Behind them came an old blacksmith, 2 healers, and a group of warriors who had served the Nightfang pack for years. One after another, they left. No shouting. No fighting. Only silence. By the time the palace bells rang, hundreds of wolves were already on the road. From the balcony, Alpha Theron Nightfang stared in disbelief. "What is happening?" he demanded. No one answered. His beta, Orion Ashclaw, watched the growing line with a troubled expression. "They're leaving Alpha." "I can see that," Theron snapped. "But why?" The gates remained open as more families stepped outside the borders of the territory. Farmers abandoned their fields. Hunters left their cabins. Even members of the royal guard quietly removed the Nightfang crest from their armor before joining the crowd. Theron's voice echoed across the courtyard. "Anyone who walks away today will never be welcomed back." Not a single person turned around. Then an elderly wolf stopped. His silver hair moved gently in the morning breeze as he faced the palace one last time.
His voice was calm.
"We aren't leaving our home." Theron frowned. "Then explain yourself." The old wolf looked him straight in the eye. "We're following our true Luna." A chill ran through the courtyard. Theron instinctively glanced beside him. Lady Isolde Evercrest stood proudly in her white ceremonial gown, the crown of the Luna resting upon her head. She looked just as confused. The old wolf slowly shook his head. "Not that Luna." Without another word, he walked away. Theron watched as hundreds followed behind him without hesitation. For the first time since becoming Alpha, fear settled deep inside him. How had everything fallen apart? 3 months earlier, the Nightfang Kingdom had never looked more alive. Banners danced above the palace walls. Musicians filled the streets with cheerful songs. Visitors from neighboring packs arrived dressed in their finest clothing. Everyone believed they had gathered to witness a celebration that would mark a new beginning. Inside the great hall, nobles, warriors, elders, and council members filled every seat. At the front stood Alpha Theron. Tall, confident, respected. Beside him stood Lady Isolde, wearing an elegant silver gown. A few steps away stood another woman, Lyanna Ravenshade. She wore a simple blue dress with no jewels and no crown. Yet more eyes drifted toward her than anyone else in the room. Not because of her beauty, because everyone knew her heart. She had healed wounded soldiers after battles. She had spent freezing winters delivering food to struggling families. She had cared for orphaned pups when no one else stepped forward. She never asked for praise. She simply helped whenever she could. Many believed she would soon become Luna. She was Theron's fated mate. Or, at least, that was what everyone believed. Theron stepped forward. His voice carried through the hall. "Today marks a new chapter for our kingdom." The crowd applauded. He raised his hand for silence. "After careful thought, I have chosen the woman who will stand beside me as Luna." Lyanna lifted her eyes. A quiet smile touched her lips. She had never cared about titles, but she believed in their bond. She believed in him. Theron reached for Isolde's hand. "I choose Lady Isolde Evercrest." The hall froze. No one clapped. No one moved. Lyanna's smile disappeared. For several long seconds, she simply stared at him. Surely she had heard wrong. Theron avoided her eyes. "My decision is final." Whispers spread through the room. Did he just reject his fated mate? How is that possible? This can't be right. Lyanna finally found her voice. "Theron." It was barely above a whisper.
He didn't answer.
She took one slow step forward. "If I've done something wrong, tell me." Before Theron could speak, Lord Varric Nightfang rose from his seat. "There is no need for explanations." His sharp voice filled the hall. "The Alpha has already made his choice." Lyanna looked back at Theron. She wasn't asking for the title. She only wanted the truth. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, doubt crossed his face. Then it disappeared. "I reject our mating bond." The words struck harder than any blade. Gasps echoed across the hall. Several elders lowered their heads. Orion's hands tightened into fists. Even Isolde looked shocked. Lyanna stood perfectly still. She expected pain. She didn't expect silence. No wolf challenged the Alpha. No one defended her. After what felt like forever, Lyanna reached up and slowly removed the silver pendant Theron had given her years ago. She placed it gently on the steps before his throne. When she spoke, her voice was calm. "I never wanted your crown." She looked directly into his eyes. "I only wanted your trust." She turned away without another word. No tears. No anger. Only heartbreak. As Lyanna walked toward the palace doors, something strange happened. The sacred moon flame that had burned inside the great hall for centuries suddenly flickered. Once.
Twice.
Then it went out completely. Darkness spread across the chamber. Every elder rose to their feet. Elder Selwyn's face turned pale. He whispered words that only Orion heard. "The moon goddess has refused to bless this choice." A heavy silence settled over the great hall. The sacred moon flame had never gone out. Not during war. Not during famine. Not even when the previous Alpha died. Yet it had vanished the moment Lyanna walked away. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Elder Selwyn stepped toward the cold stone altar. He tried to relight the flame with a ceremonial torch. Nothing happened. Again. Nothing. A quiet murmur spread through the hall. "This has never happened before. It isn't possible." Theron forced himself to remain calm. "The flame means nothing," he declared. "The ceremony will continue." No one looked convinced. Even Lady Isolde hesitated before taking another step. She lowered her voice. "Alpha, perhaps we should wait." Theron shook his head. "My decision has already been made." Lord Varric smiled to himself. That was exactly what he wanted. Outside the palace, Lyanna walked through the courtyard without looking back. Servants stopped their work. Children she had treated after injuries ran toward her. "Luna, Lyanna." One little boy wrapped his arms around her. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" She forced a smile and brushed his hair away from his eyes. "I don't know." The boy frowned. "My mother said you'll always be our Luna." Lyanna's heart tightened. She gently hugged him before walking away. From an upstairs window, Orion watched everything. Something about the day's events felt wrong. Theron had loved Lyanna for years. He had trusted her more than anyone. So what had changed? His thoughts were interrupted when Lord Varric entered the room. "You seem troubled, Beta." "I've served the Alpha long enough to know this doesn't feel like his decision." Varric folded his hands behind his back. The Alpha finally learned the truth. What truth? Varric's eyes narrowed. "Lyanna has been meeting with wolves from the Shadow Ridge pack." Orion stared at him. "Do you have proof?" Varric pulled a folded letter from his coat. "It was found in her room." Orion accepted the letter. The handwriting looked convincing. It spoke of secret meetings and hidden plans. Yet something bothered him. Lyanna always sealed her letters with blue wax marked by a silver moon. This letter carried black wax. A tiny detail, easy to miss, but impossible for Orion to ignore. Before he could ask another question, Varric took the letter back. The Alpha has seen enough. Then he walked away. Orion remained where he stood. His instincts had kept him alive through countless battles. Those same instincts now whispered that someone had carefully arranged every piece of this puzzle. Meanwhile, Lyanna reached the small cottage she had called home since childhood. She packed only what she truly needed. A few dresses, her healing herbs, old journals, the silver bracelet her late mother had given her. As she closed the wooden chest, someone knocked. It was Morel Dawnwood, her closest friend. Without saying a word, Morel wrapped her arms around Lyanna. "I tried to stop them." "I know. You shouldn't leave." Lyanna looked around the tiny cottage. "Every corner of this place reminds me of him." Morel wiped away a tear. "The pack loves you." Lyanna gave a sad smile. "I love them too." She glanced toward the palace standing high above the valley. But staying would only divide them. Morel reached into her pocket. "I almost forgot." She handed Lyanna a small leather pouch. "I found this outside your door this morning." Lyanna opened it. Inside lay a moonstone pendant she had never seen before. Folded beneath it was a single piece of parchment. Only one sentence was written. If the moon rejects the crown, follow the stars. No name, no seal, no clue who had left it. Lyanna read the message twice. What does it mean? Morel slowly shook her head. I don't know. At that very moment, back inside the palace, Theron stood alone in the council chamber. The celebration had ended early. No music, no feast, no joy. Instead, reports covered his desk. Several healers had requested permission to resign. 3 senior warriors had refused promotions. 2 respected elders had left without speaking to him. He frowned. This is ridiculous. A guard entered and bowed. Alpha. What is it now? The Western Hunting Division has requested transfers. Theron looked up. All of them. Yes, Alpha. His jaw tightened. Denied. The guard hesitated. They've already gone. Theron slowly stood. What did you say? They left before dawn. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. This wasn't about one rejected mate anymore. Something much larger had begun. Outside the palace walls, Lyanna took one last look at the kingdom she had devoted her life to protecting. Then she stepped onto the forest path. She had no idea where it would lead. She only knew she could never return as the woman she had been. Hidden among the trees, a hooded figure watched her disappear into the woods. The stranger whispered softly, "The prophecy has begun." The forest was quiet. Only the sound of leaves beneath Lyanna's boots followed her as she walked deeper into the wilderness. She had no destination, no plan, only the hope that distance would ease the pain in her chest. Hours passed before she reached a narrow stream. She knelt beside the water and washed the dust from her hands. For the first time since leaving the palace, tears finally came. Not because she had lost the title of Luna, not because another woman had taken her place, but because the man she trusted most had never asked for her side of the story. She closed her eyes. I hope one day you learn the truth. Then she stood and continued walking. Back at the Nightfang Kingdom, life had begun to change. The marketplace was quieter than usual. Shops closed before sunset. The laughter that once filled the streets had disappeared. People whispered instead. Did you hear? More families left this morning. They followed the southern road. My sister says they're looking for Lyanna. No, they're waiting for her. Every conversation ended the same way, with silence. Inside the palace, Theron sat through another council meeting. One seat after another remained empty. The royal healer hadn't arrived. Neither had the master blacksmith. Even 2 village chiefs were missing. Lord Varric broke the silence. They're only frightened. They'll return. Theron looked around the table. I've sent messages to every village. No one has replied. Before anyone could answer, Orion entered. His expression was grim. The eastern grain stores have stopped delivering supplies. Theron frowned. Why? They refuse. They said they no longer recognize the palace's authority. The room fell silent. Lord Varric slammed his fist onto the table. Then arrest them. Orion didn't move. There aren't enough guards. Theron's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? More than half resigned this morning. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The kingdom had never faced anything like this. Meanwhile, Lady Isolde wandered through the palace gardens alone. She had dreamed of becoming Luna. She imagined celebrations, respect, admiration. Instead, servants lowered their heads but never smiled. Children stopped playing whenever she walked past. The warmth she expected simply wasn't there. Near the fountain, an elderly gardener carefully trimmed a rose bush. Isolde approached him. May I ask you something? The old man nodded politely. Of course, my lady. Why does everyone look at me as though I don't belong here? The gardener hesitated. Then he answered honestly. Because respect cannot be announced. She looked confused. It must be earned. Those words stayed with her long after she walked away. That evening, Elder Selwyn climbed the steps of the Moon Temple. He carried fresh oil for the sacred flame. Again, he tried to light it. Again, nothing. The chamber remained dark. His hands trembled. It has never refused us. A young priest stepped closer. What does it mean? Selwyn looked toward the moon shining through the temple roof. The moon goddess is waiting. For what? For the rightful heart to return. Far beyond the kingdom. Lyanna finally reached a small village hidden between the mountains. The people there barely had enough to survive. A little girl lay burning with fever inside a wooden cottage. Without hesitation, Lyanna gathered herbs growing nearby. She worked through the night. By sunrise, the child opened her eyes. Her mother burst into tears. You saved her. Lyanna smiled softly. I'm just glad she's breathing again. Word spread quickly. By afternoon, villagers lined up outside the cottage, seeking her help. She treated every person who came, never asking for payment, never asking their names, only asking where it hurt. Back inside the palace, Orion entered the royal archives. Something still bothered him about the letter Lord Varric had shown him. He searched through old records until he found copies of official palace correspondence. Then he noticed it. Every letter written by Lyanna used elegant looping handwriting. The forged letter had sharp, narrow strokes. Different. Completely different.
His heart raced.
It was fake. Someone had copied her signature, but not her hand. Just then, he heard footsteps outside the archive door. The handle slowly began to turn. Orion quickly hid the documents beneath his cloak. The door opened. Lord Varric stood there, smiling. As always, Beta, you ask far too many questions. Lord Varric stepped into the royal archives and quietly shut the door behind him. Dust floated through the narrow beams of sunlight. His eyes settled on Orion. I've been looking for you. Orion remained calm. I was checking the kingdom's records. Varric smiled. At this hour? The council deserves facts, not rumors. For a brief moment, neither man spoke. Then Varric walked closer. You've always been loyal to Theron. I am. Then stop chasing ghosts. Orion met his gaze. I'll stop when the truth stops hiding. Varric's smile faded. Be careful, Beta. He turned and left. The moment the footsteps disappeared, Orion let out a slow breath. He reached beneath his cloak and unfolded the copied letters once more. Someone inside the palace had forged the evidence against Lyanna. He was certain of it now. He simply couldn't prove who.
Yet.
Far from the kingdom, Lyanna continued helping the mountain village. She stitched wounds, delivered medicine, and comforted frightened families. The villagers insisted she stay. For the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully. Before sunrise, someone knocked on her door. An elderly woman stood outside, wrapped in a gray cloak. Her silver eyes seemed strangely familiar. You are Lyanna Ravenshade. I am. I've been waiting for you. Lyanna frowned. We've never met. The woman smiled gently.
No.
But I knew your mother. Those words stopped Lyanna cold. My mother died when I was a child. So you've been told. The woman turned toward the forest. Come with me. After a moment's hesitation, Lyanna followed. They climbed a narrow trail hidden behind ancient pine trees. Hours later, they reached a forgotten stone sanctuary carved into the mountainside. Moonlight symbols covered the entrance. As Lyanna stepped closer, the heavy stone doors opened by themselves. She froze.
How?
The old woman answered softly. They recognized your blood. Inside, glowing crystals illuminated the walls. Ancient murals stretched from floor to ceiling. They told the story of women wearing silver cloaks while standing beside wolves beneath a full moon. The old woman pointed toward one carving. That is your ancestor. Lyanna looked closer. The woman's face looked almost identical to her own. I don't understand. You were never born to become an ordinary Luna. The words echoed through the chamber. Your family protected the moon blessing for centuries. Lyanna slowly shook her head. My mother never told me. She couldn't. Why? Because someone wanted your bloodline erased. Silence filled the sanctuary. The old woman walked toward a stone altar. Resting on it was an ancient silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. She lifted it carefully. Your mother brought you here once. Lyanna stared at her in disbelief. I was only a baby. She begged us to hide your identity. From whom? The old woman's expression hardened. From the man who feared what you would become. At the palace, Theron couldn't sleep. Every report that reached his desk carried more bad news. 3 border villages had stopped paying tribute. The Western Patrol had vanished. Merchants were choosing other routes instead of entering Nightfang territory. Nothing made sense. He walked alone through the palace courtyard. The fountain had stopped flowing. The flowers around it had begun to wilt. Even nature seemed different. He remembered Lyanna kneeling there every spring, planting fresh herbs with the palace children. He had never noticed until now. Everything she touched had flourished. Everything she left behind seemed to fade. Elsewhere, Lady Isolde entered the royal library hoping to understand why the kingdom had turned against her. She found Elder Selwyn reading beside a candle. "My lady." She sat across from him. "I need the truth." "You already know part of it."
No.
"I know everyone blames me." Selwyn closed his book. "They don't blame you. They blame the choice." She lowered her eyes. "If Lyanna truly betrayed the kingdom," Selwyn interrupted gently, "then why has no one produced a single witness?" Isolde looked up. For the first time, she began questioning everything she had been told. Back inside the mountain's sanctuary, the elderly woman placed the silver pendant into Lyanna's hands. The moment her fingers touched it, a brilliant silver light spread across the chamber. The ancient symbols carved into the walls began glowing one after another. The old woman smiled. "The sanctuary has accepted you." Lyanna looked around in shock. "What does this mean?" Before the woman could answer, a deep rumble shook the mountain. Dust fell from the ceiling. One of the glowing murals suddenly cracked down the middle. The old woman's face turned pale. "No." Lyanna tightened her grip on the pendant. "What is it?" The woman stared at the broken mural. "The seal is breaking." "What seal?" "The one your bloodline has guarded for generations." Outside, a terrifying howl echoed across the mountains. Not the cry of an ordinary wolf. Something far older. Something that should never have awakened. The howl rolled across the mountains. Every bird took flight. The ground trembled beneath Lyanna's feet. She looked toward the forest. What was that? The old woman did not answer immediately. She closed her eyes, listening. Then she whispered, "It has awakened." Another howl echoed, this time much closer. The silver light inside the sanctuary flickered. The old woman turned to Lyanna. "We don't have much time." She led her deeper into the sanctuary until they reached a circular chamber. At its center stood a stone pedestal. Resting on it was an ancient sword with a silver blade. Moonlight seemed to dance across its edge. "What is this?" "The Moonfang blade." Lyanna stepped closer. "It belonged to the first guardian." The old woman looked directly at her. "Now it belongs to you." Lyanna shook her head. "I've never held a sword." "You won't win because you're the strongest. You'll win because you fight for others." Before Lyanna could respond, hurried footsteps echoed outside. A young scout rushed into the sanctuary, breathing heavily. "The northern village has been attacked." "By whom?" I don't know." His voice shook. "They looked like wolves, but their eyes were completely black. They killed without mercy. They weren't protecting territory. They were hunting." The old woman's face turned grim. "The curse has spread faster than I feared." Lyanna reached for the Moonfang blade. The moment she touched the hilt, a silver glow surrounded the weapon. The scouts stared in amazement. The legends were true. At the Nightfang Palace, another emergency meeting had begun. This time, almost every chair was occupied. Not because people wanted to be there, because fear had driven them together. A messenger burst through the doors. He dropped to one knee. "Alpha Theron stood. Report. The northern border has fallen." The room erupted into frightened voices. "What happened?" "Bandits."
No.
The messenger swallowed hard. "Our warriors couldn't stop them. They weren't ordinary wolves. They kept fighting even after suffering fatal wounds." Silence filled the chamber. Theron grabbed his sword. "Prepare every soldier." Lord Varric quickly stepped forward. "I'll organize the defenses." Theron nodded. "Do it." As everyone hurried out, Orion remained behind. Something felt wrong. The attack had happened only days after Lyanna left. The timing couldn't be ignored. Far outside the capital, smoke rose into the evening sky. Burned homes lined the village roads. Children cried for missing parents. Warriors carried the wounded toward the healers' tents. Lyanna arrived just before sunset. Without hesitation, she began treating the injured. An elderly man grabbed her hand. "You came?" She smiled sadly. "Of course I did." Another survivor looked toward the forest. "They're still out there. We've never seen creatures like them. They don't fear fire. They don't fear steel." Lyanna glanced at the glowing moonfang blade resting beside her. For some reason, it had begun shining brighter. Hours later, Theron and his warriors reached the ruined village. His heart sank. He had fought countless battles. None had looked like this. Bodies lay across the streets. Homes had been destroyed. Deep claw marks covered the stone walls. One captain approached him. "We're too late." Theron clenched his fists. "Search for survivors." As the warriors spread out, a little girl tugged on his cloak. "Alpha." He knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" She slowly shook her head. "The nice lady saved us." "What lady?" "The healer." Theron's eyes widened. "Lyanna?" The girl nodded. "She left before you arrived." She pointed toward the western road. Everyone wanted to follow her. Theron looked around. Nearly every survivor was staring in the same direction. Not at him. At the road Lyanna had taken. For the first time, he realized something painful. When people were afraid, they searched for Lyanna, not their Alpha. Back at the palace, Lady Isolde entered Varric's private office. The door was slightly open. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but voices stopped her. One man whispered. The forged letters worked perfectly. Another laughed. The Alpha never questioned a thing. Isolde's heart nearly stopped. Forged letters? She carefully stepped back before anyone noticed. Her breathing became uneven. Had Lyanna been innocent all along? If that was true, everything had been built on a lie. As she hurried away, she failed to notice one of Varric's guards watching from the shadows. He quietly followed her. Lady Isolde didn't stop walking until she reached the palace gardens. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. The words echoed in her mind. The forged letters worked perfectly. She leaned against a stone pillar. If those letters were fake, then Lyanna had never betrayed the pack. And Theron had rejected his true mate for nothing. A voice broke the silence. "My lady." She turned. It was Orion. He immediately noticed the fear on her face. "What happened?" She looked around to make sure they were alone. "I heard Lord Varric speaking." Orion stepped closer. "What did he say?" "He mentioned forged letters." Orion's expression darkened. "So, I was right. You already suspected him?" "I've suspected him for weeks." For the first time, both of them realized they were chasing the same truth.
Meanwhile,
Lord Varric stood inside the council chamber. One of his guards entered. "My lord." Well, Lady Isolde heard the conversation. Varric slowly turned. "Did she hear everything?" "I believe so." His eyes narrowed. "Then we no longer have time." He walked to the window overlooking the palace. The Alpha must never discover the truth. Outside the kingdom, Lyanna remained in the ruined village. She worked from sunrise until long after sunset. She bandaged wounds, prepared medicine, comforted frightened children. Even after exhausting herself, she refused to rest. That evening, Captain Ryland Stormbane arrived with a group of surviving warriors. He removed his helmet and bowed his head. "We came to thank you." Lyanna looked surprised. "You owe me nothing. We owe you everything." He glanced toward the frightened villagers. "When the attack began, our Alpha never reached us. But you did." One by one, the warriors lowered their heads in respect. None of them called her Luna. They simply treated her like the leader she had always been. Back at the palace, Theron couldn't ignore the growing unrest any longer. Reports covered his desk. Another village had emptied. More guards had resigned. Several merchants had cancelled their trade agreements. His kingdom was falling apart. A knock sounded at the door. "Come in." Elder Selwyn entered. "You wish to see me?" Theron nodded. "Tell me honestly, why is everyone abandoning me?" The old elder looked into his eyes. "They aren't abandoning you." "Then explain it." "They're following the person who never abandoned them." Theron remained silent. Selwyn continued. "A crown earns obedience. A kind heart earns loyalty. You had both." The elder paused. "Until you chose pride over trust." Theron lowered his eyes. For the first time, he had no answer. That night, Orion secretly met Isolde inside the royal library. He spread several documents across the table. The handwriting doesn't match. The wax seal is different. The dates are impossible. Isolde carefully compared each letter. "They're all fake." Orion nodded. Someone planned this from the beginning. Before they could continue, the library doors burst open. Several armed guards rushed inside. "Beta Orion, you are under arrest for treason." Orion slowly stood. "Treason?" The captain looked uncomfortable. "By order of Lord Varric." Orion understood immediately. Varric knew they were getting close. Without another word, Orion overturned the table. Books scattered across the floor. Candles fell. Smoke filled the room. In the confusion, Isolde grabbed the evidence. "Go!" Orion shouted. She ran through a hidden passage while Orion held the guards back. Miles away, Lyanna stood outside the mountain sanctuary beneath a full moon. The ancient pendant around her neck suddenly began to glow. A soft voice echoed through the night. Not from the forest.
Not from the mountains.
But from somewhere deep within her. "Return before the final moon rises." She looked around. "Who's there?" Only silence answered. Then the pendant grew warm in her hand. The old guardian stepped beside her. "The moon goddess has spoken." Lyanna looked toward the distant lights of the Nightfang Kingdom. "I swore I would never go back." The old woman nodded. "This time, you won't return for the Alpha. You'll return for the wolves who still believe in you." Lyanna closed her fingers around the glowing pendant. Far away, another chilling howl echoed through the darkness. This one was closer to the capital than ever before. The howl echoed across the valley. This time, everyone in the capital heard it. Parents rushed their children indoors. Shops slammed their doors shut. Even the palace guards tightened their grip on their weapons. Something was coming, and no one could stop it. Theron stood on the western wall, staring into the dark forest. A scout galloped through the gates on a tired horse. He barely managed to climb down before collapsing to one knee. "Alpha." Theron stepped forward. "Report. The cursed wolves have crossed the river." "How many?" "We couldn't count them. They kept coming, and—" The scout hesitated. "The villages aren't waiting for your soldiers anymore." Theron's face hardened. "What do you mean?" "They're leaving. They're heading toward the mountain sanctuary." Theron's heart sank. "Why?" The scout lowered his head. "They believe Lady Lyanna is the only one who can protect them." Across the kingdom, long lines of wolves filled the roads. Families carried blankets and food. Warriors escorted the elderly. Healers pushed carts filled with medicine. Nobody was running. Nobody was panicking. They were simply following hope. At the front of the procession walked Captain Rylan. Beside him were village elders. Behind them came hundreds of wolves. One little girl smiled as she held her mother's hand. "Will Lady Lyanna really keep us safe?" Her mother squeezed her hand. "She always has." Hidden inside an abandoned watchtower, Orion caught his breath. He had escaped the palace, but barely. A familiar voice came from behind him. "I knew you'd find this place."
He turned.
Isolde stepped out of the shadows. She still carried the bundle of documents. "I managed to save everything." Orion quickly searched through the papers. Then he found it. The original letter, written in Lyanna's own hand. It wasn't a confession. It was a report. She had warned the council weeks earlier that strange creatures had been seen beyond the northern border. She had begged them to strengthen the kingdom's defenses. Lord Varric had hidden it. Instead, he replaced it with forged letters accusing her of betrayal. Orion looked at Isolde. We can finally prove she's innocent. Before either of them moved, the tower door burst open. Varric's soldiers rushed inside. There they are. Orion drew his sword. Run. Isolde shook her head. Not this time. She picked up a fallen spear. For the first time since arriving at the palace, she chose her own side. The fight was short but fierce. Together they forced the soldiers back and escaped through a narrow passage beneath the tower. Meanwhile, Lyanna stood outside the sanctuary as hundreds of wolves arrived. She watched in stunned silence. Old friends, children she had once healed, farmers, hunters, warriors, entire families. One by one, they stopped before her. No one spoke. Then the elderly wolf who had first walked away from the kingdom stepped forward. He slowly removed the Nightfang crest from his cloak. He placed it on the ground. We no longer serve a title. He looked into Lyanna's eyes. We follow the one who never stopped serving us. Others did the same. Soon, dozens of silver crests covered the earth. Then hundreds. Lyanna's eyes filled with tears. You shouldn't have left your homes. A young mother smiled gently. Our home was never the palace. It was wherever someone cared whether we lived. Those words struck everyone standing nearby. Lyanna looked across the crowd. So many had sacrificed everything. Not for power, not for wealth, but for trust. She took a deep breath. I won't promise that everyone will survive what's coming. The crowd remained silent. But I promise. I will stand between you and every danger until my last breath. A powerful cheer echoed through the mountains. For the first time in weeks, hope returned. Back at the palace, Theron stood alone inside the empty throne room. The once grand chamber felt hollow. The banners hung motionless. The seats of the council were deserted. Only Elder Selwyn remained. Theron looked around the room. I thought an alpha's strength came from the throne. Selwyn quietly answered.
No.
It comes from the hearts willing to stand beside him. Theron closed his eyes. Everything he had built, everything he believed, had fallen apart because he failed to trust the one person who had never betrayed him. A guard suddenly rushed inside. Alpha. Theron looked up. The cursed wolves have reached the capital. Outside, a deafening roar shook the palace walls. The final battle had begun. The first cursed wolf crashed through the northern gate. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the streets erupted into chaos. Warriors rushed forward, but ordinary steel barely slowed the creatures. Their black eyes glowed beneath the moonlight. Every wound healed almost instantly. Theron fought at the front, cutting down one beast after another. Still more kept coming. A captain shouted over the noise. We can't hold them. The palace bells rang without stopping. Smoke filled the sky. For the first time in generations, the Nightfang Kingdom stood on the edge of destruction. Then, a silver light appeared beyond the gates. Every warrior turned. Lyanna walked into the city. The Moonfang blade rested in her hand, glowing brighter with every step. Behind her came hundreds of wolves. Not an army. A family. The same people who had chosen to leave the kingdom now returned because innocent lives were in danger. Theron looked at her in disbelief. You came back. Lyanna never looked at him. I came back for them. She raised the Moonfang blade. A wave of silver light swept across the battlefield. The cursed wolves staggered. For the first time, they could bleed. The warriors seized the chance. Together they pushed the creatures back. Near the palace entrance, Lord Varric slipped through the confusion. He carried a dagger coated with poison. His eyes remained fixed on Lyanna. If she dies, the prophecy dies with her.
He charged.
Before anyone could react, Isolde stepped between them. The dagger struck her shoulder instead. She cried out and fell. Varric tried to attack again. Orion intercepted him. Their swords clashed across the stone courtyard. You destroyed this kingdom, Orion shouted. No, Varric sneered. I almost ruled it. The fight ended when Theron joined the battle. For a long moment, uncle and nephew stood face to face. You lied to me. Varric laughed. You wanted someone to blame. I merely handed you a reason. Theron's grip tightened. You forged the letters. You made me reject my own mate. Varric smiled one last time.
No.
You chose to believe them. Those words hit harder than any weapon. Theron realized the painful truth. No one had forced his decision. He had refused to trust the woman who had never given him a reason to doubt her. With one final strike, Varric was defeated. The remaining cursed wolves let out a terrifying howl before collapsing into silver dust. Silence slowly returned to the kingdom. Days later, the people gathered in the palace courtyard. No celebration had been planned. This day was different. It wasn't about victory. It was about choosing the future. Theron stepped onto the platform. He removed the Alpha's ceremonial cloak. Then, before the entire kingdom, he knelt. No one had ever seen an Alpha kneel before his own people. His voice carried across the silent courtyard. I failed you. I failed my pack. I failed the woman who gave everything while asking for nothing. He turned toward Lyanna. I don't deserve another chance. I only ask for your forgiveness. The courtyard remained silent. Lyanna walked toward him. She stopped only a few steps away. I forgave you long ago. Hope appeared in Theron's eyes. Then she continued. But forgiveness doesn't erase the life we lost. His smile disappeared. You broke my trust. And trust isn't rebuilt with words. She gently placed the old silver pendant, the one she had returned months earlier, into his hand. It belongs to your past. She looked around at the wolves standing behind her. They deserve leaders who listen before they judge. One by one, the wolves stepped forward, not to stand behind Theron, but beside Lyanna. Elder Selwyn raised his staff. From this day forward, the people have spoken. Their queen has already been chosen. A silver crown was placed upon Lyanna's head. No sacred flame was needed. No ceremony. The cheers of the pack were blessing enough. Theron remained on one knee, not because anyone forced him, because he finally understood that leadership was never about power. It was about earning the trust of those who chose to follow. As the sun rose over the kingdom, Lyanna looked toward the horizon. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She wasn't thinking about the pain she had endured. She was thinking about tomorrow. A tomorrow built on truth instead of fear. A kingdom where no innocent voice would ever be silenced again. The pack didn't leave because another Luna wore the crown. They left because the woman who carried their hope no longer did. And when hope returned, so did the future. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more unforgettable Alpha and Luna stories filled with love, betrayal, redemption, and powerful twists. Tell me in the comments. If you were Lyanna, would you have accepted Theron back? Or would you have walked away forever? I read your comments, and I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you for watching until the very end. I'll see you in the next story.